headlines of VTV News. Vietnam and Brazil agreed to upgrade bilateral relations to strategic partnership. Vietnam's trade turnover set to reach $800 billion. And later on in our world news, Yemen's Houthis attack vital targets in Israel.
Broadcasting from Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. VTV News starts right now.
Hello and welcome to VTV News, broadcast live to you from Hanoi. You're with me, Lina Pham, and here's the top news of the hour. Party General Secretary Tô Lâm met with teachers and educational managers ahead of a Vietnamese Teachers' Day on November the 20th. He commended the entire education sector's achievements and emphasized a number of key tasks to meet strategic goals for the 100th anniversaries of the party and the country's founding. The primary goal is to complete the cause of education and training, innovation, creating human resources for national construction and defense. The education sector's contribution is crucial, requiring great efforts, strong breakthroughs, and the unified support of the entire party, people, and army, especially teachers and education managers. During the event, Party General Secretary Tô Lâm presented flowers to outstanding teachers and awarded the third-class labor medal to the University of Economics, Vietnam National University, Hanoi. Vietnamese Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính held talks with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in Rio de Janeiro on November the 17th. During their meeting, the two leaders agreed to elevate bilateral relations to a strategic partnerships and issue a joint statement on this upgrade. Reflecting on the 35-year bilateral relationship, he affirmed that it has been built and developed on 5 fundamental pillars: shared ideals and trust, cultural affinity, complementary economies, sincere and warm sentiments, and aspirations for peace and development. President Lula da Silva acknowledged the Prime Minister's proposals regarding Brazil's recognition of Vietnam's market economy status. He also supported the early initiation of negotiations for a free trade agreement between Vietnam and the Southern Common Market in 2025, aiming to bring practical benefits to both sides and contribute to each country's development. The leaders instructed their respective foreign ministries to swiftly develop and finalize the detailed contents of the Vietnam-Brazil Strategic Partnership Framework. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính attended a ceremony on November the 17th local time to inaugurate a plaque commemorating late President Ho Chi Minh in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The Vietnamese revolutionary leader had stayed in the city in 1912 during his journey to find ways to liberate his homeland. The plaque, inscribed in both Vietnamese and Portuguese, states that President Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnam's independence on September the 2nd, 1945, establishing the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. It also mentions UNESCO's resolution honoring him as a national liberation hero and a great cultural figure of Vietnam who contributed to global struggles for freedom. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính emphasized the plaque's significance as a historical landmark. He noted that young generations from both countries can learn about history, preserve late President Ho Chi Minh's noble values, and strive to elevate bilateral relations for peace, development, cooperation, and prosperity in each nation. The National Assembly is currently reviewing a draft amendment to the law on management and use of public assets. This amendment focuses on decentralizing authority to ministries, sectors, and localities to approve plans related to the reorganization, handling, and disposal of public assets, including land and buildings.
The Vietnam Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, Agribank, currently has 23 real estate properties that have remained unresolved for over 5 years due to unapproved disposal or reorganization plans. The revised draft law on management and use of public assets proposes aligning asset handling procedures for state-owned enterprises with existing land and enterprise laws. This aims to eliminate, thus avoiding conflicts and overlaps in legal application.
The new draft law, providing an important legal foundation to improve the efficiency of managing, utilizing, and reorganizing public assets.
Under current regulations, government agencies seeking to sell confiscated goods or assets must obtain approval from higher financial authorities for their disposal plans. This process is often lengthy, causing valuable assets to deteriorate and become wasteful. Consequently, the draft law considers expanding the decentralization of authority to expedite processes and reduce inefficiencies.
We propose granting authorities the power to handle their own asset disposal without needing to consult higher financial agencies. They would be held accountable under the law for the plans they submit, and we only need to carry out post-audit checks.
Decentralization must be tied to the capability of organizations to implement and manage it effectively. This process must be supported by inspection mechanisms to ensure the best and most efficient use of public resources.
The revision of the law on management and use of public assets is expected to not only reduce legal overlaps, but also establish a solid legal framework to ensure more efficient use of public assets, thereby minimizing losses and waste.
Vietnam's agricultural, forestry, and fishery exports surged over 20% in the first 10 months of the year compared to the same period last year. The Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development projects monthly export revenues of approximately $5.5 billion in the final 2 months of this year, potentially pushing the annual total to a record $62 billion. Rice exports remain a highlight, while fruit and vegetable exports, especially fruits, have shown impressive growth. This strong performance reflects the effectiveness of trade policies, promotional efforts, and improved supply chain connectivity. Additionally, the rising quality of Vietnamese agricultural products continues to win over even the most discerning international markets. In the first 10 months of 2024, Vietnam's total export and import turnover exceeded $647 billion, marking a 15.8% increase compared to the same period last year. If this growth continues, the country's trade could set a new record, potentially reaching $800 billion by year-end.
New plastic injection molding machines have recently been installed at this factory in Hai Phong, Vietnam. With export orders up 20% compared to the same period last year, the company sees this as a clear signal to ramp up investment.
The markets in Europe and the US have made strong recoveries, boosting imports, while the domestic market consumes about 80% of our production and is growing positively. The demand for raw materials is also rising sharply, which has led to a significant increase in our orders.
Although the foreign direct investment (FDI) sector accounts for over 70% of total export-import turnover, local enterprises have earned the trust of international markets in producing key industrial products such as textiles, footwear, and furniture.
U.S. distributors and consumers have consistently rated Vietnamese products highly for their quality, variety, and competitive prices. This trend remains strong, even amidst trade tensions, political instability, and rising inflation.
Domestic production is recovering positively, and global demand is picking up strongly. Given this trend, Vietnam's total trade turnover this year could reach $800 billion.
However, global demand has not yet fully recovered, and with rising production input costs and difficulty in raising prices, manufacturers and exporters still face major challenges.
Recent epidemics and Typhoon Yagi have caused temporary disruptions in the food supply chain. To maintain a balance between supply and demand, especially as the Lunar New Year approaches, the agriculture sector is swiftly increasing livestock numbers and restocking farms to meet growing market needs.
With just 3 months remaining until the Lunar New Year, Wan is busy preparing to increase her herd of pigs for sale. During this transitional season, ensuring biosecurity for her pigs is crucial.
During the outbreak, I disinfected the farm every 2 days. Now that the epidemic has subsided, I disinfect once a week. If the situation remains stable, we will continue to restock and increase the number of pigs.
Weather is expected to remain volatile until the end of the year, heightening the risk of disease outbreaks such as African swine fever, flu, ears disease, and avian influenza. As a result, many localities are ramping up vaccination efforts alongside safe farming practices.
Recent vaccination campaigns against African swine fever, avian influenza, and other diseases have proven to be effective. Specialized agencies and vaccine suppliers will continue to implement supportive vaccination policies to ensure animals achieve the required vaccination coverage.
Vietnam still spends millions of US dollars annually importing meat. Therefore, it requires more effective management solutions.
If we manage imports well and only rely on them partially, we won't become dependent. We are ready to take measures to control smuggling of livestock products, especially live animals, through border provinces. This is a major factor contributing to the spread of disease.
Demand for food typically increases by 10 to 15% at the end of the year. After a period of decline, the price of live pigs has stabilized. This is a positive signal for farmers hoping to expand their herds and restock, ensuring a steady domestic food supply.
The Ho Chi Minh City Tax Department has reviewed and placed over 11,600 e-commerce business owners under tax management. The taxable revenue for this group exceeds $23.33 billion, with a total declared tax liability of more than $304.17 million. The department has also advised the General Department of Taxation to work with major e-commerce platforms like Shopee and TikTok to obtain a list of suppliers conducting high-revenue live stream sessions. In the first 10 months of this year, Ho Chi Minh City's total e-commerce revenue reached nearly $3.83 billion, accounting for 33% of the country's total e-commerce revenue. And before we move to the next part of VTV News, let's check out how the Vietnam Dong is weighed against the other currencies in the world market today. Coming up next, Quảng Nam handles vessels without registration, fishing licenses, and inspections. And Lâm Đồng province rallies support to remove dilapidated housing. Thanh Hóa has announced a list of 506 fishing vessels at high risk of violating regulations against illegal, unreported, and unregulated or IUU fishing. Additionally, 55 vessels have been removed from the list of those at risk of violation. The list of fishing vessels at high risk of violating IUU regulations is posted at fishing ports and shared with inspection and control teams. The Thanh Hóa Fishing Port Management Board is coordinating with relevant authorities to increase patrols and monitoring at sea, inlets, beaches, and fishing ports. As of November 2024, Quảng Nam province still has about 83 nose fishing vessels, those without registration, fishing licenses, and inspections. The province aims to have the Department of Fisheries, local authorities, and border guards in coordination with relevant agencies resolve the issue and ensure all vessels are registered, licensed, and inspected by November 30th, 2024.
Since the beginning of the year, the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development and the Border Guard of Quảng Nam have raised awareness, patrolled rivers and seas, and handed over 150 IUU fishing cases. They've sanctioned 107 violations, primarily for issues with communication and monitoring equipment on fishing vessels.
We are working with the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development and local authorities to assist fishermen in completing registrations, ensuring that no 3-no vessels operate in the province.
Localities are currently focused on promoting the registration, inspection, and licensing of fishing vessels. The Provincial Fisheries Sub-Department has deployed working groups to guide fishermen through the registration and licensing process.
Many fishermen struggle with travel and lack awareness about the issue, making it difficult for them to follow state regulations.
Fishermen must complete the registration form, assume responsibility for their assets, and obtain confirmation of no disputes from the Commune People's Committee. Then they need to fulfill their tax obligations at the district tax office.
Guangnam's People's Committee has directed People's Committees at lower levels to complete the registration and licensing of all fishing vessels 6 meters to 12 meters in length by November 2024. District and state-level chairpersons will be held accountable for any delays.
In line with the nationwide campaign to eradicate temporary dilapidated housing, Lâm Đồng Province is making significant efforts to eliminate substandard homes. This initiative has garnered widespread community support, enabling many poor families to move into safer, more stable living conditions.
This family was just days away from completing construction on their new house. The project was made possible through a $2,000 USD grant from the province's fund, supplemented by the family's own contribution.
Our old home leaked during the rains, but with the government's support, we can now live without worry.
Local authorities, in collaboration with the Department of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs, have conducted thorough surveys to identify poor and near-poor households in need of housing assistance.
The program has so far received contributions exceeding 1.7 million USD. This will contribute to eradicating over 1,000 temporary and dilapidated houses by the end of 2024.
Our old house was in terrible shape, with a roof that became unstable during storms. Now, thanks to the state's support, we have a spacious and sturdy home. I feel incredibly fortunate and grateful.
Our primary focus is on poor and near-poor households, as well as ethnic communities. Businesses both within and outside Lâm Đồng Province have also embraced this mission, recognizing social welfare as an integral part of their corporate responsibility.
As part of the nationwide initiative to remove temporary and dilapidated housing, Lâm Đồng Province has committed to eliminating nearly 1,000 substandard homes by 2025.
The Blue Dream Melody ship brought over 1,100 Chinese tourists to the international passenger port in Hạ Long, Quảng Ninh on Sunday. This marks the first passenger ship from Beihai, Guangxi, China to Hạ Long after a long hiatus, opening up opportunities for trade and tourism development between the two regions. A second passenger ship from Beihai is expected to arrive in Hạ Long on Monday. Once a polluted wasteland buried under piles of garbage and scrap, the sand bank along the Red River under Hanoi's Long Biên Bridge has undergone a stunning transformation. Thanks to the efforts of the People's Committee of Phúc Xá Ward and the Women's Union of Ba Đình District, this area is now filled with golden daisies, creating a new hotspot for locals and tourists alike.
Each morning, the garden comes alive with the efforts of women from Ba Đình District who have spent nearly a year nurturing the flowers. Contributing both their time and resources, they've transformed a flood-prone, garbage-filled area into a lush and eco-friendly destination.
It was quite an effort to get these flowers to blossom this beautifully. Multiple stages were required for the colors to appear this bright. We had to cut overgrowing pulps to allow enough space for new flowers to bloom.
I feel revitalized just seeing these flowers. Their beauty and the warm sunlight do wonders for our health.
Visitors, many dressed in elegant naozai and simple white dresses, flock to the garden to capture its beauty. The delicate yellow blossoms basking in the gentle autumn sunlight create a dreamlike atmosphere, adding to the charm of the historic Long Bien Bridge.
I didn't expect to see such a stunning flower garden.
We had to get up at 4 a.m. to prepare for our trip to the garden, but it was all worth it.
This is such a major change. I feel an overwhelming sense of pride and gratitude for our people, especially the flower growers who have made this land more beautiful.
We didn't think the flower garden would attract this many visitors. It has become a meaningful destination in Hanoi. More importantly, it serves as the city's flood-protected barrier, improving the quality of life for nearby residents.
This revitalization of Phie's riverside represents the community's resilience and creativity. The Daisy Garden is poised to boost local ecotourism while spreading an important message about environmental consciousness and collective responsibility.
The archaeological sites of Som Chat Cave and Mai Đá Làng Vành in Lạc Sơn district have just been recognized as special national relics. Deputy Prime Minister Lê Thành Long attended the ceremony and directed Hòa Bình province to continue protecting and promoting Hòa Bình cultural values. This effort aims to boost tourism and socio-economic development, as well as prepare a dossier for UNESCO to recognize Hòa Bình culture as a world cultural heritage. Som Chat Cave, discovered in 1975, is a prime example of Hòa Bình culture in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. Dating back 21,000 years, it boasts the richest collection of stone tools among Hòa Bình cultural relics. The Mai Đá Làng Vành site, a typical Stone Age archaeological relic of the Hòa Bình culture, was discovered and excavated by French archaeologist Madeleine Coligny in 1929. Coming up next in our world news, Yemen's Houthis attack vital targets in Israel. And activists highlight urgency of world hunger ahead of G20 summit. The Houthi forces attacked several vital targets in Israel, the group's military spokesperson said on Saturday. The militant group claimed it struck a series of key military targets in the Tel Aviv, Jaffa, and Ashkelon areas using multiple drones. The Houthis have issued a warning of potential attacks on Israeli territory. They also declared a ban on vessels associated with Israel from traversing the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait until Israel ceases its ongoing military operations. Human rights activists placed 733 empty plates on Copacabana Beach to represent the 733 million people suffering from hunger worldwide ahead of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro. The symbolic protest aimed to draw attention to global hunger and urge world leaders to take action. Under the theme Building a Just World and a Sustainable Planet, the G20 summit will take part in 3 sessions and focus on 3 main priorities: social inclusion and the fight against hunger and poverty, sustainable development and energy transition, and global governance reform. The Biden administration announced that the U.S. Department of Commerce has awarded TSMC Arizona Corporation, a subsidiary of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company Limited China, up to $6.6 billion in direct funding under the CHIPS Incentives Program. This award will support the company's planned investment of over $65 billion in 3 facilities in Phoenix, Arizona, These facilities will produce essential semiconductor chips used in everyday products such as smartphones, washing machines, refrigerators, cars, and artificial intelligence applications. TSMC's projects represent the largest foreign direct investment in the U.S. since the CHIPS and Science Act was enacted 2 years ago. Berlin-based startup NeoCarbon has introduced a carbon capture technology that utilizes waste heat to extract and repurpose carbon dioxide. This innovation marks a significant step forward in energy efficiency and emission reduction.
The novel, patented module captures pure CO2 using excess heat from industrial processes. It works through a two-reactor system. Air is drawn into the first reactor, where CO2 is trapped. When this reactor is full, the system switches to the second reactor for continued air intake. Meanwhile, the saturated reactor is heated with the customer's waste heat, releasing 100% pure CO2 for collection and storage.
And it's the first time we have one of those systems run remotely, autonomously, for days or weeks in a row. So that proves like the stability of the product. And the second thing, it's actually that we also incorporated with the customer's waste heat. So the first time that NeoCarbon runs a system that doesn't produce its own energy, but actually takes it from waste heat, which is the whole vision of the company. So we've now validated here with this module that it actually works.
NeoCarbon's NeoDuo is much smaller than a standard freight container and has the carbon reduction capacity of a forest with some 500 trees.
The difference with forests is also that the CO2 we get from here is pure and you can utilize it or store it forever, whereas trees, after 100 years, they burn or they rot and then your CO2 is back in the atmosphere. So this is more durable, more measurable, and indeed much more compact as well.
Still in the testing phase, this innovative technology holds great potential for future application in sustainable energy solutions. If all goes well, NeoCarbon's modules will make a strong contribution to mastering the net zero future of human civilization.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. And that's it for this edition of VTV News. Thank you very much for watching. To rewatch our program, you can download VTVgo from App Store or Google Play, or tune in our YouTube channel at youtube.com/VTV4Go. Goodbye for now.